Manhood, brought to you in part by Reboot Sports Drink.
Welcome once again to Manhood, one of the great conversations that we have on a regular basis, off camera, on camera, and then what we try to do is try to bring what's also off camera, on camera, and during the week to discuss with you, because it's important that we reach each other, and when I say each other because we're all brothers in this, to ensure that we have a better outlook and on more positive behavior and what might be adjudged to be undesirable behavior. And one of the things, the topics that we are going to discuss this morning, and even in that our understanding might be different, is ignorance of the law and ignorant about the law, or ignorant to the law, or ignorant of the law. So the difference really is ignorance. And when we say ignorance, meaning I simply didn't know about the law, whether we travel or in Trinidad and Tobago. And that in itself has a difference, because you can still understand the difference between right and wrong. But ignorance, if you genuinely didn't know about something and it's all innocence, and there's ignorant about or to or of the law, which is simply arrogance. And you're literally breaking that law, whether you agree with it or disagree with it. So I'm really eager to get into that topic because it has so many variations and stages to it, and implications more so on not just how we present ourselves, but also to how people feel around us, and ultimately the consequences of such actions. So I'm always delighted to have to my right-hand buddy, Johanse Iodike, behavior change consultant.
That intro is real long, eh? Right. What was going on?
Yeah, I'm trying to flex.
Go ahead, man. Go ahead.
And even the phone ringing, I mean, they don't know we taping our show. But to Johanse's right, Robert Vincent Charles,
Thank you, Father.
Criminal attorney at law, and also known as Vincenzo.
At large.
At large. And the one and only, this guy. I don't know, we keep giving him a seat. We don't learn.
He shows up every week.
He shows up every week and we say, listen, just give this guy a seat. Niall McNish.
What's up, guys?
So let's get straight into it. What do we understand by that? Ignorance of the law, and ignorant about the law, to the law.
I mean, the language in itself, and I'm glad that we have an attorney here to get the proper understanding, because even that's what you were saying, they sounded a bit convoluted, right? And I myself am sometimes have ignorance of the law, because I don't know. I generally don't know.
You don't know, but you start with words like convoluted. Right. But that's okay.
And if I'm using your definition of now ignorant of the law, I would say I'm also guilty of that, because sometimes I know certain things and I still not do it. And I don't know if I incriminated myself.
You did. You literally just did.
That's all right.
Right? Slightly, but I didn't say what it is.
We'll talk after.
Yeah, I didn't say what it is.
800 Vince.
But if I'm being real, there are some things that I know I shouldn't be doing, especially driving. I think driving is more of it for me.
That's under pet peeves. We'll go into that, because driving specifically, there's some specific ones inside of there. And if you're one of those culprits,
we'll fight it out. Right? So I'm glad I'm here. Vince is here to clarify that. And when you were speaking about it, I was thinking, as men, we should be aware, because if we are providers and protectors, whether it is of ourselves or our families, if it is here in Trinidad or somewhere else, we should be aware of the law. I mean, we can't have the full 100%, especially if we go into another country, to know every single thing. But we should be aware, because that in itself is a protection for us and our family. So that's just my perspective so far on what you see.
So our supreme document is the Constitution, yeah? That determines or defines what our rights are. And rights are positively asserted. So a simple example would be that everything is legal, and pieces of legislation then deem certain actions or certain things illegal. So say it's an offense to drive over 65 kilometers on a certain stretch, etc.
Right.
So unless it's an offense to be committed, you could go ahead and do what you You do.
Do what you want.
So you start off with the Constitution saying you have the right to equality, freedom of religion, freedom to assemble, these sorts of things. And then later on in a different piece of legislation, they may make it an offense to assemble for the purposes of inciting a riot, these sorts of things.
Okay, all right,
So rights are always positively asserted. Offenses are created by pieces of legislation to restrict certain types of behavior with a penalty.
So in other words, based on what you just said, it sounds like I could do whatever I want unless they say otherwise.
Technically, yes. Technically, yes.
Kind of liking that.
So
But there are always consequences to that
well,
action.
there's consequences for an offense. Yeah? You have the right to freedom and enjoyment of your property. Yeah? So it means that you can be sitting home doing whatever you want to do in the confines of your space, and nobody can't tell you what to do. It's an offense, though, let's just say, to possess a certain amount of marijuana.
Okay.
So even in your personal space, we are permitted to do whatever you want to do. And you feel you want to sit down for a week and smoke yourself senseless. It's an offense to have a certain amount.
Right.
So you understand the
Okay.
play between
Nuances.
with positively asserted rights to what's an offense. Yeah?
I like that.
Yeah.
I never actually saw it on that. Like, it's really...
There's a difference even in what we're trying to break down.
Correct. And I
Between the-
think now we are at a very, very crucial stage in the development of Trinidad as a republic. Because we're seeing lots of pieces of legislation being passed, and a lot of people don't pay attention to it. And we don't realize until 2-3 years down the road that, hey, we should have paid attention. So I'll give you an example. Just this morning, I saw one of the Trinidad artists being charged with being a gang member.
Right. Yes, that's true, yeah.
Okay, so that piece of legislation was passed almost a decade ago. In the right hands, let's just say in this instance, they determine that this person is a gang leader and they charge them. What they don't understand is that if you're charged as a gang leader, your automatic right to apply for bail is delayed for a certain time. There's certain restrictions, etc. Great. What happens though if you have a dispute with a law enforcement officer who determines, hey, the best way to pull this person and get him off the street now, charge him as a gang member. Being charged as a gang member comes simply by saying you're part of a group with a common purpose, with insignias, these sorts of things.
Oh, I mean,
We would fit into that group right now.
Well,
That's true.
from what you're saying, I was considering that. I mean,
Yeah.
a men's group. Let me say a men's group.
Yeah.
We are a group. We have an insignia, and we're not necessarily inciting violence. But I mean,
But let's just say we were talking about very, very, what was determined as anti-government or anti-establishment.
and we were passionate.
Correct.
We were
Somebody
passionate.
could determine, hey, that's borderline. Let's pull him in and charge him. Let the courts determine that. Right? And then your freedoms that are positively asserted, right to bail, these sorts of things, are denied. What happens then?
So would that fall into ignorance of the law in that situation where, like as the example, all of us here, we are speaking passionately anti-establishment. We may not be, fully abreast of the legislation currently. So is it a way where, let's just say one of us had the information and we do have this group here together, is there a way for one of us to be able to prevent being in a situation where we get pulled in as...
Well, I think that's a classic example of ignorance of the law.
Okay.
The ordinary person would not be aware of specific pieces of legislation that could affect them. But I'll take it a step further. All of us grew up with many friends from different backgrounds.
Correct.
Trinidad, as we knew it back then, there was no sort of barriers to who mixed where, why, when.
That is true.
And yet you would have tend to have had a friend who someone might determine is a bad boy.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
You happen to, Carnival just finished. He called you and said, I haven't been in town forever. Let me go and check this fed. You
Right.
jump in the car with him. He have two brethren in the back. No problem.
Are they rolling?
All they rolling. Police stop them. Yeah? Turns out that they may have had a firearm in the car. They may have had a certain amount of marijuana in the car, etc. Boom. Them get charged with gang.
Right.
You get charged with
with
gang. You understand what I'm saying? How easy it is. And it really comes down to a subjective decision made by someone at the instant without taking any time to say, well, let me really look at how the facts of this really plays out. A determination is made, and at the end of the day, then you're before the court sometimes 2 to 3 years. Yeah.
But I just want this is all
interesting,
really,
right?
really good and interesting stuff, and it is borderline within the topic, and I think we're going into a more of a granular approach to the ignorance of the law, right? But I just want to clarify, because you did say certain things that I want to make sure to our audience that when you mention about you can practically do anything, and Vince clarified the difference between your rights and a part of the what might be an offences act, right? Now within there, like for example, you mentioned anti-government stuff. Now anti-government needs to be clarified. Is it the present government? You might be anti to the present government or political party, hence the opposition. So the opposition isn't a gang.
Yeah.
You understand?
Okay,
so
right,
so I
right,
want
yeah.
so I want him to clarify that
clarifying
so that you
that,
understand.
I was specific in saying anti-government or anti-establishment because we're looking at the offices, not the
Right.
persons.
Gotcha.
That's what I wanted you
Yeah,
to clarify.
absolutely.
And also a better understanding of laws that we speak about. And as Johan say, cough day, just another thing that we generally do, and we don't even band as brothers. The immediate thought is COVID out, and when instead I should be saying, "You okay there, buddy?" So I
Want a sip of water?
Yeah, a sip of water. You want some reboot? So these are things that as it comes to mind, I like to talk about, because it is behaviors that we now exhibit that are more in survival mode as to really looking out for one another. So for my subconscious thought, I apologize. But moving along smoothly, a couple of things that in our discussions that we have had that people don't know about, they're laws that still exist and that we have now made either common law or common understanding of. So do you know that, for example, playing loud music is against the law? There are things that going into a Price Mart or to a grocery and buying alcohol, and once you leave the premises, customs and other areas can actually take you for that, because you're only allowed, and you may be able to explain that in more detail about some of these laws that are still there in its Western day capacity, or pre-British, independence capacity, British like our colonization that exists even up to today.
So it's archaic laws then,
It
essentially.
is. So
but the police are still within their right
legally-
to.
But why
Because
would
it's
they?
illegal.
Yeah.
But why would archaic laws still be pushed upon the population?
Well, they're not pushed upon. I'm saying to the legislation still exists,
It's
and
just
therefore, if you came across an officer of the law who's there to uphold the law, just decided on that day, you can argue afterwards that it's unfair and this one everybody doing it, or the common law understanding, but it still doesn't change the fact that it's still there.
yeah.
And Vince,
So
if you
pieces
mentioned a
of
couple
legislation remain alive unless repealed, meaning a further piece of legislation saying that that is no longer an offence and they amend it or whatnot.
Gotcha.
Or it has been struck down by the courts who determined that is an incorrect interpretation, or it's contrary to what the Constitution says, which is our supreme document.
Supreme document. That I can
And so it'll remain alive. So something as simple as at one time it was an offense to wash your clothes in the Maraval River. And to the best of my knowledge, it still remains an offense. Now, people don't do it, but is it enforced? No. What Rob was talking about, you're only entitled to a specific amount of alcohol in your personal possession at your home. So I could guarantee you,
Excuse me?
if persons came to your home and you were over that limit, it could be seized, you could be charged, those sorts of things. So that's what I'm saying. People really are not paying attention to what really happens in the Red House and how it's not going to affect us now. 10 years' time, your kids, your family members, these sorts of things. So I think fundamentally people need to pay a little bit more attention to what's happening now with the legislative process.
Well, all right. So let's take it away from people need to, and as we are men, let's just say man of the household, right? as the man of a household, what you're suggesting is that, one, I should be paying attention to the Parliament channel, where I am listening, keeping abreast of all the current legislations that are happening.
I'm suggesting that keeping yourself abreast of current events as a man in Trinidad is fundamentally one of the most important things you can do. Yes?
So we need to take a break. And, there's that discussion of, even as we come back to ignorance of the law and ignorant, as in ignorance CE and ignorant NT to the law. So a lot of people, even with the speed limit, think to themselves, listen, I'm driving a 4x4, I am going at 100K. But the law states that you still have to be driving at 65K. Now, whether you agree with it or not, that listen, my van don't carry load, I'm not carrying timber, I'm not carrying concrete. However you want to put it, that it's and we say it all the time, it's a stupid law. Doesn't change the fact that it is still law. And as long as you break that, there are consequences to that. And I want us to also come to the most important part, where it affects behaviors and can lead to violence and mental stress and all the rest of it, is the ignorant that leads to, which is really deemed as arrogance. And that is what I really want us to start to focus on. So we take a short break. A lot of really interesting stuff going on. Manhood. So thanks for staying with us for this conversation. Johanse, Vince, Niall. The topic that we're discussing is ignorance CE of the law, and ignorant to, about, or of the law, which is ignorant as in NT, ending with NT. And bottom line is it's arrogance. We even mentioned about a typical Trinidad personality. Now, I'm not sure.
Like that to me.
I don't really want to label it Trinidad personality, because it happens all over the world. But my specific, as we get into it, let's discuss, for example, a pet peeve.
Your pet peeve.
My pet peeve. Well, okay,
I like the specifics. I like the specifics.
Your pet
peeve.
Okay, Johan say my pet peeve. Okay, peeve nonetheless. You're driving down the road. The speed limit is now 100K, right? You are behind a person. Now, this is where I'm going to contradict myself, and I'm doing it on purpose. You're driving behind the person, and that person knows all well and good. Keep left, except when overtaken.
You don't know the person.
Standard.
Keep left.
You don't have to know that. So that ignorance.
No.
They
I
should.
know they know
They
that
should.
because they went.
They
They
pass
should.
the regs.
Because they pass the regs.
Yeah.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
you at one point you knew what the law is. So are you saying that they forgot? And if they forgot, that's ignorance in itself. And if they have dementia, they should not be on the road, right? So
Well,
either
the
way you
alternative
take
is
it.
also they did something illegal and bought their license.
And that's
still
breaking
a
the
thing?
law. That's still an offense.
That, of course, that's still a thing.
Something that we could talk about on another show, right? So, but the point is, we're giving them the benefit of the doubt, because you have your license legally and you're on the road, so you understand. Keep left, except when overtaking. There's also this little gadget as well. There's this little thing
indicator?
that cars come with.
Wow.
Yeah,
You're very passionate about this pet
called an
peeve, by the way, just saying.
indicator to determine, because it causes a lot of accidents.
That is true.
Causes a lot of accidents. So it's not just a peeve based on what people might say, well, you're ignorant, right? As an NT. No, it causes fatalities. It causes people to make judgment calls that may not lead to fatality, but damage cars, etc. Right? But we're coming back to, you're driving down the road. This is the scenario, and you're behind someone, and you're looking ahead of them. So there are two scenarios. You're looking ahead of them. There's no cars,
Right.
so it's not like they're driving safely. And my thing is, it's 100. So people tend to say it's a fast lane, but it's not the fast lane. It really is that everyone
it's a
should be
overtaking.
once
On the left.
once you're driving, it's keep left except when overtaken. I want to say that again. Keep left except when overtaken. Yeah?
Guys, he's really
Yeah?
passionate about
So-
this. Please keep left.
and your indicator, because you see people just drive and turn, you know.
Gotcha.
So two things happen there. One, there's ignorance on both parts, because you may be that you decide, I'm going to ride your bumper. to get you to move.
Right.
Who does that?
And
man?
that in itself,
Which is
you know,
illegal.
that in
Illegal
itself,
drive.
well, it's not illegal.
It is.
It's
You're supposed to-
unsafe.
It's
It's
unsafe.
unsafe.
It's
No, you're supposed to
illegal.
keep
but a
one
certain
car length
difference.
away from.
Three.
That's law.
You see, I want to.
3 car lengths.
I want to
away,
make sure.
guys. 3
I
car
want to
lengths
make
away.
sure that you guys know the law.
I
I don't.
I was ignorant.
I don't drive.
I'm
correct.
ignorant.
Correct.
Flashing your lights, popping
Correct.
your horn.
So there's all of these things that we understand, and I'm using the particular example, and I'm using my example as notice I started off very, very carefully and strategically to say it was a peeve, because I wanted to demonstrate my ignorance, as in arrogance, to the situation.
Gotcha.
So because they are breaking the law, I am determining that okay, it's okay for me as well to break the law because you're breaking the law.
Okay.
Right? So, yes, it's still a pet peeve. Keep left except when overtaking. It's still a pet peeve.
Right.
But I am still not within my right to decide I'm going to ride this guy's bumper or lady's bumper, right? And then flash my lights and all these other things. Because what I'm doing is, one, I'm putting myself in danger. That person may then be more ignorant and then mash the brakes as we
Yeah,
see that
brake check.
happens.
Right.
And then, one, it could end up in a road fatality. And also, road rage. We see it happening. So all of these things are as a result, and that's why I want that mentality overall of, one, we decide we're not taking on the law. We decide when we should take on the law and who is right and who wrong. We become judge, jury, magistrate, the whole, the whole caboodle. And also, in many cases, we say it's a Trinidad personality, but who the bleep are we
All right,
to make those
Robert,
determinations?
Here it is. I want to get my bounce, right? You know why?
I don't know why.
Because that is one of my peeves too. I'm telling you, we are agreeing on something.
Right.
You see that keep left when overtaken?
Right.
It was a peeve for me so much that I started to do research and ask people why they do it. Right? Because that's my thing. Not the behavior, but it's the why. And from the feedback I got, I mean, I didn't interview the entirety of Trinidad and Tobago, but a lot of people, and this could seem a little weird now, first we go in psychologically.
Right.
Most people think no matter what speed they're going, once they're in the fast lane, they're going fast.
That's true. It's
Right?
That makes sense.
So they could be going 60 miles an hour, but if you're driving on the right in the fast lane, in their mind, they're going fast.
Right.
And if
That's
you,
half the population of Trinidad and Tobago.
and if you come and flash them, something wrong with you, you rushing. So it's best you fly over me, no?
Yeah. Come over the
Right?
bonnet. Yes.
No, I given those explanations because understanding human behavior and how it relates to the law real important. So sometimes the person actually not being ignorant, right? They just in a wrong state of mind, or an incorrect, not wrong, incorrect state of mind. That's one. Two is, and I would say, and I'm going based on the research I did, more female drivers now than male said that they have a certain fear of switching lanes. So when they're in one lane,
They
right,
like to stick
they
there.
like to stick in, unless
true.
to them is a clear safety, they could go again. I'm not condoning the breaking of the law.
I want
but
to
I'm-
stick
but
up
I'm
in that
trying to
because
understand it.
I want you to continue.
a
because
pet peeve of mine.
because one, you're saying they have a fear. So let me help you guys out there. You have a fear, don't drive. You can't be on the road behind a machine that can kill and decide that you're fearful of something. If you're in fear of that, this is not where if you're in fear, go forward and live and be courageous and all that. You are behind a machine. People tend to take it as a form of leisure. You are something that, can take away
dangerous
someone's
piece,
life. It's
yeah.
very dangerous. Check the road fatalities. And you're in fear of moving. And persons who decide, hey, you know what? I'm going eastbound. I'm going to Piarco. I'm going to drive in the right lane all the way until I have to turn off.
Stay in the left lane.
Stay in the left
No,
lane.
I
It's
agree-
against
I
the
agree
law.
with you.
I said 50% of the population.
I agree with you.
I
on that.
read into that.
That, you
But
know,
it happened so many times for me. I had to understand why. And then I started doing a test also. So people would drive slowly in the right lane, no matter male or female. I would drive next to them after and watch them.
Yeah.
Well, that's the next part of it.
And then,
We drive and we
and
get
then
them on.
when after watching them and they switch lanes after I pass, I realized they really know is dotishness they're doing.
Correct.
But some people,
You do.
people really don't know, which is the ignorance of the
it.
law.
Right.
Now, I'm putting it this way because for us, I think to function, laws are there for a reason. Whether we question some of them with the validity, the relevancy to this time or not, they're there for a reason because when, let's just say, we had the Supreme Constitution where we could do whatever we want, then we realize, okay, there are certain things that started happening that we need to put certain restrictions on, right? So I'll go into that. So there's some kind of logic behind it.
Well, they ought to be.
There ought to be some sort
I
of
was about to say, yeah.
some sort of logic behind it. So, and that's on one end. And then I'll say this quick. Because there's the law, but then there's also the Trini law. I think being
The social law.
social law, being aware of the parallel between the two, because not switching lanes, switching lanes without putting on the indicator, right? That's against the law. But I know when people are going to switch lanes now because I understand the mentality on the road. So I don't need to know that's not how it's supposed to be.
Right.
But I understand it. And sometimes I remember once I was coaching a client who got an accident, was traumatized, and we were doing some reconditioning back on the road. And what I was explaining to her is look for what it is, not how you think it should be. And when she started doing that, her driving improved because she could see when people trying to squeeze her. She could see when people going and change without the indicator on. So I'm putting it that way, one, navigating the law under the law. We're talking about the rule. It could be other things. But also, I understand the importance of being mindful of what the law truly is.
So I want us to get into, because I don't want the episode to finish with it. There's so much that could be packed into this. There's so many other peeves, but I really want us to now, in a granular fashion, determine and in a more focused way as we talk about arrogance, the difference as well between that and certain things that might be deemed cool. So growing up, your parents' rules, your parents' law in the house. Let's face it, we all watch a Playboy, or I don't even know if they have that magazine. You still subscribe, or
I don't even know if those things exist anymore.
They do.
Right. So
They do?
your Visa card being charged and you have no idea. Okay. So when we come to this, there are things, porn, all of these things that even, the iteration now is Pornhub and all these other things now from what was Playboy. The point is, you may know it's inappropriate by your parents or by the laws of which the home or the societal environment that you're in is governed, right? So they're different. There's law as in government law, country law, but there are laws that we that are applied to us in our daily life. Rules. Again, we have the discussion because we're still coming around arrogance and ignorance to it. But then determines, okay, well, I can break this or I can do this, and then there's a law of the country. It's all forms in your mind of breaking something that you know is wrong.
Gotcha.
Right? And I'm saying to you, at what point, so there's being cool. So, for example, before the marijuana was decriminalized, it was cool to say, hey, be one of the rebels and take your little pull. And I'll smile and I know you want to talk about that. You have your own peel, But then there's also within that where in our lives we wouldn't be sitting down here right now had it not been for people that have lobbied in different ways, whether go to the court and actually made, to have something changed, or stood for something and marched against it because it wouldn't be changed. For example, slavery. Yeah. And so I want us to talk more about that, also that understanding, as to when, is there any guidance as to when a law should be broken?
Well,
is there
can I
any
ask you a
guidance?
question before that? Me saying anything about past transgressions could affect me in the future. He admitted to something.
If you admit to an offense that's very serious, there's no statute of limitations.
That's very serious.
Yeah?
Well, there's Section 34 that you can't be tried after 10 years.
No.
Okay, if I admit to something
that has been knocked down and repealed, etc.
So if I admit which I haven't done.
There are two types of offenses: summary offenses, which are less serious, that's handled in the magistrate's court, and indictable offences which attract very serious penalties, and that is done at the High Court.
Gotcha.
There's a 6-month time limit on summary offences.
Okay.
So if you commit it today, 6 months from now, they haven't charged you, you can't be charged for it.
Okay.
A lot of that is traffic offences and whatnot, etc.
Okay.
More serious offences, robbery, discharge of a firearm, possession firearm, murder, it's indictable. You talk about it 20 years from now,
Gotcha.
you're getting locked up for that.
Well, all right then.
I mean, and there's a case of that with that gentleman from, is it Germany, or where he spoke about a murder that happened and they're now trying to extradite him. I don't know. I'm rambling according
So
to
the
you.
reason I asked,
But yeah,
the reason I asked is
you're
because
growing.
one, as Trinidad and Tobagonians, I feel that a lot of us operate under the forgiveness is better than permission kind of thing.
Correct.
We'll see how far we are boundary pushers, really and truly, right? And the reason why I asked all that because I used to dabble in a little cannabinoids back in the day, right? And granted, that was breaking the law. However, I knew personally that law was trash, like really and truly. I'm like, none of them really understand the benefits of cannabis, blah, blah, blah. So I was ignoring, or I was ignorant, or being ignorant towards that particular law. I'm assuming that applies in that situation.
Well, I'm also thinking, Niall, as I said, when I said, who the are you, meaning that's our personality, who are you and who am I? Like when I determine I'm going to come behind that person and things like that, who are we to determine that a law is stupid? Because to someone, their difference in their moral compass, that you then decide, hey, I don't like that law. That law doesn't apply to my way of thinking, so it's stupid. It's trash.
Well, it's only stupid if it is that I am willing to accept the consequences that come along with it.
Correct.
So I am now saying that law is stupid. I'm willing to give up my freedom for it. I'm willing to fight for it. I'm willing to do a slew of other things for what I want to be part of my supreme constitution, right?
I love that.
So yeah, I really like that. I got literally do a set of research for that now. But so at that point, I would stand my ground and be like, yo, this what it is. I's a puller, you understand? And whatever comes with that is what it is. What it is. Now, granted, I have been blessed to not been in any situation that I would have had to, deal with those consequences. Unfortunately, now, many moons later, it is now decriminalized. Now, for me, I find it's horrible for people who did get charged at a time, who's probably sitting down in prison right now for something that I did, and now I could do freely out on the streets.
Those are two different issues. The first thing is, it is still an offense to have a quantity of marijuana in your possession.
Yes.
So they've decriminalized, meaning it's still an offense, but if you have possession of a small amount for personal use, you're not going to be charged. So it's like saying, I'm not enforcing the offense against you in these circumstances.
Okay, so the offense is still there.
I want you to understand that now. I want people to understand what Vince is talking about, between the difference between it is no longer illegal and decriminalized.
Yeah.
So if you're, for example, you're working in a company, that happens, you're not going to be charged for it. In terms of you're not going to go to jail, you're not going to get any sort of fine, but you're still being deemed as breaking the law. It's still an offense.
Correct.
You're still breaking the law, and that it's just that we're not going to. We, in terms of the government, the country is not going to hold you accountable in terms of penalties for it. So I want Vince to continue.
So, just very quickly, it's still an offense to have marijuana possession. Is still an offense. It still remains there. Correct.
Wrong. Okay.
But possession of, I believe, less than 10 grams for personal use. And then they had the great debate about the number of male trees and female trees in your house to grow, etc.
You wait.
So once you fall within a specific set of circumstances, the government or the law enforcement are saying to you, we are not going to arrest you and prosecute you for that.
Okay.
That's the first thing. It does not mean that you could have 30 grams and walk outside of school and smoke. You still can't smoke outside of school and these sorts of things. So common sense approach, you ought to know the things before
You can't be ignorant.
You can't be ignorant and say, well, okay, they say it's legal, so I could stand outside while picking up a child smoking a big blunt. Right?
And
No,
I
you
almost it. I don't know why I've seen it in my mind's eye.
Yeah.
Somebody really doing that.
Somebody
to
pull up, with a big blunt, pick up the children from school. You can't be driving and smoking.
Is that, and what I question is that ignorance or being ignorant? Because even with the law, and I'm sure you encounter this, I've realized, even though it's explained in a certain way using standard English, people still don't understand what it means.
Trinidadians.
And not to say they're doing that for spite, you know.
They interpret it to suit themselves.
Right.
That's if let's just get out of there.
It's not that they, and in this case, it's not ignorance, because they know what they now know is that what the different words they call them, Babylon, Popo, police, all officer, all of these different things. What they do is they look at you in your face now and say, you can't touch me. So again,
because of ignorance and ignorance.
But it's a form of arrogance, because if it is still offense, why would you do something and you're seeing an officer of the law and you're purposely doing something because you know that they can't do anything about that particular circumstance? Again, this is what we talk about.
Yeah.
Why do we have these behaviors? And I wanted to explain maybe some of the thinking behind that, and then let's go to break.
All right. You reminded me, I started a thesis on this and haven't finished it yet to know about why Trinidadians break the law. So thank you very much. Right, I feel like God chastising me here to finish. Anyway.
And not only why do we Trinidadians specifically break the law, but why in this specific instance, you know it's out in the open and it's like the rebel in us.
What I got is, in some of my limited research thus far, is we in ourselves, the passive resistance first are going back from slavery time. Even though all races weren't involved in slavery, passive resistance was something that was born out of slavery. And passive resistance included things like, in terms of calypso, drums, we would do
Carnival.
things. Right. So our culture became or was birthed, and the genesis was out of passive resistance. So therefore, we have a lot of passive resistance in us. We are skilled at passive resistance.
In our DNA.
Yes, exactly.
that. I like
Perfect.
that. You're
Perfect.
right.
I love the pun intended, right? And so therefore, that's why we're good at, when something happens, instead of facing it directly, instead of going and lobby, which we should do, we would do calypso, create memes, quarrel about it in the rum shop. Or
meme.
The best of them.
yes, or we would say, forget our police officer, forget the law. I just driving on the shoulder, because you see how this road design, I just go in and do my own thing. Instead of going through, using proper or legal channels to do it, we emote, or we have an emotional response based on that passive resistance. But of course, the passive resistance in many of these cases illegal. So therefore, even though you feel it as your right, that I could see this thing is logically or illogical for how we should be operating, but the thing is, I reacting emotionally to it. And when I react emotionally, I put myself in trouble. So it's like, I'll use a good example. I remember when they decriminalized marijuana. Somebody say, well, I can smoke anywhere now. No. But so what decriminalize mean? Instead of taking the time to understand what it is. So I wouldn't say, even in that moment, the person was necessarily ignorant, because they just didn't know what decriminalize mean. So I putting it out there, and we understanding, one, as men, I think, and I'm bringing it back to that because it's manhood, right? As men, and I taken what you said, and I actually going to change some of my behavior in terms of being more aware of what's going on, instead of taking the passive route. And I just quarrel about this. So I realized I now have to quarrel it myself
Part
about
of the
being
problem as well.
Yeah, about being passive, about knowing the law, and then also even encouraging other people. Because if we identify a law that we don't like or it don't make sense, then we as men should find a way to lobby, find a way to make some change.
We really have to go to the break, because that is the law of the land at the moment, in terms of
The law of Roberts.
the law of TV right now. And I'm sure the viewers are like, okay, they need a beer break or something. But I really want us to, in part of our summary and those nuggets, to understand is, even using the decriminalization, where it's like your parents saying, you could make the choice. right? There are no consequences to you making the choice. Either way, I will support you. And you decide to go the latter, knowing, well, it now comes down to right and wrong and immorality. Because the law is now saying, I'm not going to charge you, but it's still wrong in the eyes of the law. And you're now saying, okay, well, I'm now making that choice to do it. And I want us to focus on is the reason why we continue to break the law in our own, because everyone does it in some form or fashion, whether it be a red light, whether it be a illegal U-turn, some form or fashion, we are breaking the law. And then we tell ourselves, we're justifying it within ourselves. Correct. And when we do these things, are we doing it out of ignorance, or are we doing it because we can simply say, we could get away with it? It's Trinidad. I could get away with that.
We can.
And that's the reality. We do. We do get away with it. Some more than others. But we take a short break.
All right, folks, we back. Of course, the talk was real spicy in the break, but we'll bring in the conversation as always. We have Rob Johanse and Vincenzo, right? Of course, the main topic that I feel like keep reoccurring that a lot of Trinidadians break is on the roads, right? And it's been, even the people behind the cameras, the main pet peeve is people driving in the left lane. I didn't think it was so big.
Right lane.
In the extreme right lane, in the overtaking lane. Now, I made a mention, which is, of course, I always try to break down as to who are these people. For me, personally, I've always only mostly seen, now guys, I know, it's cancel culture out here, but really, actually, they're really business. Mostly seen women in the right lane.
Correct.
And
women in the right lane driving slow.
Driving under the speed limit.
Under the speed limit, okay.
Right? And I feel like a lot of the times, which in their mind, I believe they're being the most safe because not being in the center lane is very intimidating. Mm-hmm. The center lane itself, especially when it's a big truck passing on this side and a big truck passing on this side. So I get that you might see them mostly on the right lane just off of comfort of driving.
But remember what I was saying before. I went and asked people, Right. I had maybe it was close to 100 people, right? I can't remember the number because it was some years ago. And I asked people, and most women said in that sample that was afraid, but they are more comfortable driving in one lane. So they choose that one lane and go. And because in their mind it is the fast lane, it's better I choose the fast lane because I'm moving fast and move there. So even though I'm driving under the speed limit, I'm in their mind is moving fast. Now I say mostly because it was about, I would say 85% women said this. So I'm going based on that sample. So we're not assuming that's what was said.
If you want to go in one lane, we are blessed in Trinidad and Tobago that alongside every highway we have a main road. Go on the main road.
No, but the main road have plenty traffic.
And you want to drive slow?
No, but
you want to be safe?
Go on the main
road. When you're on the highway.
If it are traffic on the main road, I'm not driving on the main road because you're supposed to make better infrastructure. So I would drive slow on the highway.
And if you're in fear, you shouldn't be driving.
I can't agree to that.
I'm not asking you to agree.
Women's brains are very logic-based. Not when it comes to relationships with men.
Okay.
I'm saying that the female species, I believe, shows far more intelligence than the male species.
I agree with that.
I agree to that.
I'm not saying you have to agree. I'm saying they apply logic.
Women is boss.
They apply logic to all aspects of their life except relationships, right? And driving being one of those things. And that, your example and your data set is evidence of that. That in their mind, and I say they, the female mind, right? This change in lane business is dangerous, etc. If I am going at or just below the actual speed limit, the safest place for me is there. Yes.
Okay.
Because that's the clearest lane.
Vince, you see that word you use, and I'm going to correct you. And of course, we can debate. We might not along, but you see, you would use the word logical, and I disagree because it's more survival. Because of how women evolve, as in physically weaker. they perceive the world based on their survival. So women are great rule followers, right?
Yes.
We are
Yes,
not.
yes,
we
yes,
men
yes,
are. We are
yes.
not great
Agreed.
rule followers.
It don't apply to us.
So they do their best to follow the rules, but sometimes it's based on survival. So even though driving under the speed limit is not
just get my
following the
mind blown
rules,
there.
it's still based on their survival.
Yeah, that
I
really
just got my
changed
mind blown there. You know why?
my outlook on it.
Because
He has a tendency. He
it
has a
seems that women would, I just say, based on survival, stay in the right lane, which inadvertently they are breaking the law. However, I almost never ever see a woman driving on the shoulder.
Correct.
It's always men
Correct.
who
Correct.
doing that.
breaking the law.
So it
And
is
it come-
intentionally breaking the law.
So let me ask you
That
something,
actually
guys.
makes sense.
Let me ask you something, guys.
Wait, I just want to say something.
No,
quick.
wait.
When he said it, it's like,
No,
oh,
because
survival.
he's going. No,
woman-
you're gonna bring it in your summary.
All right,
You're gonna bring it in your
I don't
summary.
remember this.
I will help you remember
It's like a
that.
pen.
Right? I will help you remember that. In that, with regards to you're saying you don't see women. Again, I want to-
Undertaking on the shoulder.
Undertaking on the
Undertaking
shoulder, right? Now, this is not about women. This is not about just what we may have noticed, right? We're not saying that women. This is not an attack on women to say that women are the ones that are doing it all the time,
Yeah.
right? But it is an observation, right? I'm saying to you, is it then that based on what Johannes is talking about, where we take these chances, is it that one, I want to come back to, we believe we will get away with it? Is it that we simply don't care? Is it that there's some form of adrenaline rush behind the possibility of being caught? Depends on, because we're talking about on the road here, but this topic here today is the overall ignorance to the law and ignorance of the law. So I'm saying, and we're just using as an example for an analogy purposes. We're talking about the biggest one, which is on the road, which is something that people experience on a regular basis. But I'm speaking overall. How do we feel about that? As to the why? Why do we do it?
Well, not even the why. For me, there's two types of persons there, right? There's those that should know better and those that do not care, don't give a damn. Yeah?
Always say it stronger than that.
Well, they don't
Say
give
it strong.
They don't give a
A little stronger. We'll
Go ahead,
be
Lopez, go
They
ahead,
do
go
not
ahead.
give a right? And apologies, Trinidad and Tobago, right? The vast majority of them fall into the I don't give a bleep. You understand? Because they know better, they should know better, but don't care. Yeah? We did a small mini poll here, and I think it comes down to a lot of it here home. Yeah? Remember, if you could break a small law, you could break a big law. And that applies from the port worker right up to the president of the country. Yeah? It's a mindset that if you decide, man, that's not important, you could break a small law, you could break the biggest law of the land. It's just a question of a factual matrix there. And I'm saying that we need to take responsibility. And we need to say, I know better, and practice that in our lives.
And what about the arrogance, Vince, to that I am in a particular position. I know if I do that, I could get away with it. Or I know somebody, or I could call somebody. In the same way you brought up earlier about the marijuana smoking, where how many of a particular class or particular demographic do you see behind bars for the same infraction? Because it's a scene that, hey, if I do something, I could get away with it. They have no way I make it out of jail. I make 2-3 phone call, or daddy or somebody's going to make 2-3 phone call. And how is it then to the person in those environments, in those communities, seeing that, are then going to feel as a Trinidad and Tobago citizen as well, that why is it I am going through this oppression? Why is I'm subjected? Nobody's saying, I mean, you shouldn't break the law regardless. But why is it seemingly there's one rule and one consequence for one person and then one for another? It is going to get people
I think you're talking privilege. Let's just throw it out there.
throwing it out there.
Privilege.
We're throwing it out there. And therefore people necessarily are going to rise up and fight against that unfairness.
So I spent a lot of my early years, I've been practicing 15 years now in Trinidad, right? A lot of my early years doing the grunt work, magistrates court, marijuana possession, trafficking, these sorts of things, the occasional gun and whatnot, etc. But I understand what you're saying there, because the people that came before the court, based on the representation that they got, determined the outcome. Yeah? I did a hell of a lot of pro bono. And there was one case in particular that really struck me, where the police had alleged that this young man with no previous record, and in the ghetto, you know, when you're in your early 20s and a clean record, you're a model citizen.
Of course.
Yeah? And I talk in early 20s. He was a WASA worker, and he had gone to purchase, to smoke, which was still illegal then.
Right.
And police pull up on the block. And they're alleging that he is the actual dealer now. And part of the evidence was that they pulled out in his front right pocket. You hear that for every single case. They pull it out, and they found a black plastic bag containing 23 foil packets with plant-like substance resembling that of marijuana.
Right.
So you know what? If I repeat that, I've heard
Yeah,
this
no,
100,000
yeah,
times,
yeah.
right? And I sat down and I thought to myself, I have two police saying this. And everybody who was there scattered, and they're not
Gone.
coming to give evidence.
Right.
How are you going to represent this man? So I sit down at night and I say, hey, I physically rolled up 25 pieces of tin foil. I didn't put plant-like substances,
Right, right.
etc. Put it in a black plastic bag and brought it into the trial itself.
Right.
And just to show the how unfeasible it was, that story was,
How
that he could have
ridiculous.
had it concealed in
In
there,
his right
nobody
pocket.
saw it and
Yeah,
all that,
correct.
etc. I was successful in the end. And that got me to thinking that it really is a privileged situation. Now, that case was actually pro bono. But ordinarily, I wouldn't have taken the time to do that for each one. Sometimes I say, boss, it's better you plead this out, right? You might get, it's your first offense, you might get a reprimand and discharge, you might get a bond, these sorts of things. I was always cognizant of what they were telling me. If a man tell me, boss, this wasn't me,
Right.
I fight in tooth and nail.
Innocent until proven guilty.
But there's no way I would apply that to every case, because I physically couldn't. I had to make a living too.
Right.
You know, so that's what I'm saying. So to come back very quickly, privilege exists.
One rule for one rule for another.
Yeah.
And if that exists, to the person who's on the receiving end in the negative impact to their end is going to deem something unfair. And when people deem something unfair, regardless whether or not they too have broken the law, they're going to act out.
Yeah.
And you see it all the time. How come he get away? How come this one and he do it too? You see people
Yeah.
say it all the time, and that
No, I agree with what you're saying, and I'm glad it's a good point, because this is something I'll give it two from an academic point of view and also from, I think, a social and a real life and a man point of view. One is, and for that same thesis, and thanks again, fellas.
You're doing your
free
thesis,
Yeah, right? It's actually in
All in voice.
forensic psychology, and I had to spend some time in court here in Trinidad analyzing and observing. And what I realized is, I didn't go through every letter of the law, but the law in itself in a lot of cases fair. But the people executing it, not fair, because it's human still, right? And some of them need to come and sit down on my couch and need us to walk through some of these things. But anyway, and I'm saying that because that is still the reality of things. So as a man, as a citizen, understand that one, I think you should know the law, but also understand that the reality is that it also depends on privilege. It also depends on how the judge feeling that day. It also depends on knowing the reality of things, because let's just say somebody in the quote-unquote ghetto can't do something, quote-unquote, somebody in another neighborhood who may be able to afford the proper representation is. And even though it may seem unfair, but we hear it a million times. Life is unfair. It's the reality. And as men,
Life is
I think
unfair.
we need to face the reality. So young men, older men, middle-aged men who are watching out there, and even women, help your sons and even yourself understand that, see things for as they are, not how we think they should be. And if we want to change it, then I think we should go along the proper lines, which is we go and lobby. Now, our lobby is not today for tomorrow. But the point is, in the meanwhile, instead of being that passive resistance of, well, I will just break the law, because of course that cannot stand up in court. No. So it's better to face the reality of things and go by the rules that are necessary to change the things that we don't like.
So I'm going to use, coming off the back of what you said, as my summary, because we need to wrap up. These conversations can always go on, and it's very important, you know. And again, I always start having one perspective and then end. Or each time I think there's no way I'm going to change it. Somehow, you know, I'm really grateful, and I feel blessed to be part of these conversations, and I hope that the viewers also feel the same after these conversations, and we hope that in some way we've impacted your initial thought on a particular perspective, and even if it's one moment that's changed to show a more positive impact in Trinidad and Tobago, and by extension the world, then I think we've done ourselves justice. You mentioned about life, life, and we make our choices, right? And life isn't fair. That's a reality. Life isn't fair, and whether ignorant of the law, as in ignorance of the law, or ignorant to the law, we make a choice, and by making a choice, then we have to, if it doesn't come in our favor, we then have to suffer or face the consequences as a result of that. So whether it means I'm going down a particular road and don't realize that there's no one-way sign, and the sign drop off, or whatever the case may be, the point is the law is the law for the reason. And it's not one rule for one and one for the other. It's supposed to be the law. Breaking the law is breaking the law. And we know when right is wrong. I'm not going to go on a lot longer. I got a lot more I want to say, and I'm sure you guys are going to summarize it. But as Johanse pointed out, I started really long in my intro. So in my outro, I'm going to cut it short and allow, I really want to hear from you guys.
Niall, go ahead.
Okay, as a certified Nepo baby, I'll end with, I understand the ignorance of my ways in applying forgiveness over permission in my everyday life. And in hearing this conversation here now, I realize that the reason why I thought like that is because I had certain privileges that most people don't have in Trinidad and Tobago, and that is what was, blurring my outlook. So after this conversation, I actually thank all you gentlemen for that. I am now, I'm slowly changing my internal narrative of forgiveness over permission, and I feel like I should take a little bit more time to pay attention to the laws and the rules that were placed by individuals more important than me.
No, don't say that.
No, okay, well,
say by persons, duly elected persons, to represent my interests.
By duly elected persons who were there to represent my interests.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
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 Well, you'll have as a summary.
No one more important, than you and me.
I actually like that. Thank you for that. That was needed.
Vince, what's your summary?
Summary is, for me, the cliche, be the change you want to see in the world, right? Take responsibility for your actions. If you are prepared for the consequences, do what you have to do. But I think that as men sitting around here, we need to start creating the positive impact we want to see outside ourselves. I'm not perfect, far from.
Right.
But every day I try to be 1% better than I was yesterday, with the view that over time, I would morph into that person that I want to be. And it's over time. So to end, I just try to put out something positive every day in my life, and just affect my personal sphere of influence, with the view that hopefully they would then create that butterfly effect.
Okay, perfect. And Vince, knowledge is power. So the more we know, the more we have power over a situation. Not necessarily power over someone, but at least we can manage ourselves better. We could manage risk, because we wouldn't even know if we could face the consequences if we're not even aware of the consequences. So what I'm taking also, as a man, I should be as aware as I can be to protect myself and also my family. And then we as men, we collectively, the more that we know, because of course what you know, I don't know, vice versa, and etc. So that's why it's good we all congregate as men,
Yeah.
speaking positivity. I mean, we could have fun and laugh and lime towards speaking positivity so that we could incite, create, and stimulate that change that is best for yourselves, your families, and the nation as a whole. This is Manhood. Thank you very much for tuning in. We have Robert, myself, Johanse, we have Vince, and we have Niall. Thank you.
And I don't want us to. I want to close on one particular point because I don't want us to leave, and I want it to be reiterated. If you don't like something, or you don't like the law, or you find it stupid or trash, whatever your thoughts are on the particular law, lobby to get it changed. That is within the law and within your right. You know, there's that saying, plant a tree from which shade you may never experience, but at least you start the process.
Correct.
Make that change, as we've heard from all our brothers here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Manhood, brought to you in part by Reboot Sports Drink.